Welcome, everyone, to vpod.ai. I'm Mike.
And I'm Susan.
You can sponsor this podcast for just $25. Your message will be featured across major platforms like Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, Spotify, and more. If you're interested, visit vpod.ai to get started today.
Short, sweet, and right to the point.
Exactly. Now let's talk about the kitchen. Everyone knows the story. I mean, it is practically a cultural commandment at this point.
Oh, yeah.
The narrative goes something like this. The American family dinner is dead. We've become a nation of takeout addicts.
Right. Nobody knows how to chop an onion anymore.
All just dooming ourselves with fast food while our stoves gather dust.
That is certainly the prevailing narrative. You hear it everywhere, from op-eds to, dinner party conversations. It's just accepted wisdom that we've lost our way.
But, and here's where it gets really interesting. What if that whole story is just wrong?
Wrong is a polite way to put it. According to the materials we're looking at today, specifically the work of historian Rachel Laudan and some extensive data from the University of North Carolina, the death of home cooking is largely a myth. The panic is, at best, significantly overstated.
I love a good myth-busting session.
Yeah.
So the plan for today is to look at the actual numbers, which are honestly surprising.
They really are.
We're going to take a trip back to ancient Rome to find out that fast food isn't some modern corruption. And we're going to get into a very heated debate, and I mean heated about what actually counts as cooking today.
It's a fascinating mix of history, sociology, and some very, very strong opinions about jarred pasta sauce.
Let's unpack this. We can start with the panic. I feel like every time I open a food magazine or a newspaper, there's some famous food writer telling me I'm failing civilization.
Because you didn't roast a whole chicken on a Tuesday night.
Exactly.
You're referring to what Rachel Laudan calls the manifestos for home cooking. She highlights writers like Mark Bittman, Michael Pollan, Sam Sifton.
Yep, the usual suspects.
And the general vibe of these editorials is that the American kitchen is in a state of moral and structural crisis and needs a rescue mission.
Right. It's this idea that if we don't all return to the hearth, society collapses.
Yeah.
It feels so high stakes. It's not just about dinner. It's about the fabric of the family.
It is. But Laudan actually looked at the data to see if the sky is really falling.
Right.
She analyzed a massive study co-authored by Barry Popkin from UNC. And this wasn't just a quick poll. They looked at nutrition and time use surveys spanning decades, from 1965 all the way to 2008.
Okay, so a huge data set.
Huge. And the trend lines simply do not match the panic.
All right, so walk us through the numbers. What actually happened?
Well, to be fair to the panic, there's no denying that eating out increased significantly between 1965 and 1992. That shift happened.
Sure, the rise of fast food, casual dining.
All of that.
Yeah.
But that's where the story usually stops in our heads. We assume it kept plummeting.
But it didn't.
Exactly. The data shows it leveled off. There has been no substantial decrease in home food supply consumption since the mid-90s.
Since the mid-90s.
Yep. We hit a floor about 30 years ago, and we've just stayed there.
That's incredible.
Huh.
That implies that for the vast majority of your adult life, and certainly mine, the rate of home cooking hasn't actually changed much.
Precisely. And here's a stat that really challenges the nobody cooks narrative. On any given day, more than 1 in 2 Americans between 19 and 65 report doing some cooking.
The 50% rule. So half the adult population is cooking every single day. That feels high, doesn't it? Just anecdotally.
I feel high.
When I think about my week or my friends' weeks, it feels like we're ordering in a lot more than that.
It does, if your definition of cooking implies, a 3-course meal made from scratch. But we'll get to definitions in a bit.
Okay.
Before that, there's another layer to this data that completely flips the script on who is doing the cooking. We often assume that cooking from scratch is a luxury, that it's something you do if you have a lot of time, a big kitchen, a high disposable income.
Right, the Sunday roast aesthetic.
Right.
You picture the beautiful, spacious kitchen in a suburb, fresh herbs in the window, and we associate fast food with lower income.
But the data suggests the exact opposite.
Wait, really?
The poorer the household, the more they eat at home.
That seems so counterintuitive. We're always told that fast food is the cheapest option, so lower-income families must be relying on it.
It's a common misconception, but pound for pound, buying groceries is almost always cheaper than prepared food, even cheap fast food. So lower-income families are actually the ones keeping home cooking alive, out of necessity.
So the people being lectured to return to the kitchen by the food writers
Are actually already there. In many cases, yes, they never left, but
there's a catch.
there is a catch. We have to be careful here because this brings us to a major ambiguity in the study. a technical detail that changes everything.
Okay.
The researchers track something called home supply calories.
Home supply. That sounds incredibly bureaucratic. What does that actually mean?
It's any food that comes from a grocery store into the home. So home supply includes, a bag of raw carrots or raw chicken, sure.
Oh.
But it also includes a frozen pizza, a jar of pasta sauce, microwavable meals.
Ah, I see the loophole. So if I buy a frozen lasagna, bring it home, and heat it up in the oven, statistically, I'm eating at home.
You're contributing to that home cooking stability statistic.
Okay, that makes more sense.
Precisely. And that's where the nuance is. The data shows we're still eating from the home supply, but the nature of that supply has changed drastically.
It makes sense when you look at the workforce context, right?
Yeah.
The labor dynamics have completely shifted.
Absolutely. We can't look at food in a vacuum. In 1950, about 34% of women were in the workforce. By 2000, that number had jumped to 60%.
And as women enter the workforce, the time for that really labor-intensive cooking just vanished.
It dropped. And eating out rose. But interestingly, both of those trends, the rise in working women and the rise in eating out, they've stabilized.
So we reached a new equilibrium. The kitchen didn't die. It just adapted to a world where everyone is working.
We moved from production to assembly, but the location, the home, remained central.
This idea of the good old days of cooking is really sticky, though. We have this mental image of, 19th century families gathering around for a stew that took 6 hours to make.
And that's where history steps in to shatter our illusions. It turns out that image is largely a fantasy, especially for the working class.
Here's where it gets really interesting. One of the notes mentioned this incredible comparison to ancient Rome.
Yes, specifically Pompeii. Because the city was preserved in ash, we have a perfect snapshot of how people actually lived.
And it pointed out that in ancient Pompeii, the poor didn't cook at home. They basically ate in McDonald's.
Well, they called them capone, but essentially, yes, ancient fast food joints. And the reason wasn't cultural, it was purely structural. If you were poor in Rome, you lived in these cramped apartment blocks.
No kitchen.
No kitchen, no hearth, because lighting a fire in a crowded wooden tenement is a terrible idea.
Right. So you had to go out.
You had to. You'd grab a bowl of stew or some bread at the capone before work or before going to sleep. It was the wealthy, the elite, who had villas, kitchens, servants.
So they were the ones who had the luxury of dining at home.
It's a total class flip.
Completely.
Today, we associate eating out at nice restaurants with wealth. But historically, eating at home was the ultimate status symbol. It meant you had space, fuel, and staff.
That puts such a different spin on the return to the kitchen narrative. It makes it sound less like a return to tradition and more like a return to a specific kind of privilege.
Exactly.
There was another story in the notes that really drove this home for me. It shifts us from ancient Rome to modern America, and it's a bit heartbreaking, about a daycare for low-income children.
That was a very poignant detail.
Yeah, the director has to teach the kids not to throw away the silverware.
Because at home, everything is disposable.
Exactly. They're so used to take-away culture plastic forks, paper containers, that the idea of washing a metal fork and putting it back in a drawer is foreign.
Wow.
And when they play house, they don't mimic cooking a roast. They mimic their parents asking, "Do you want a beer? Or can I get you a coffee?"
It just shows how deeply economic reality shapes domestic life. Rachel Laudan, the historian, argues this. The idea that everyone gathered for a home-cooked meal is a fantasy. Fast food, street food, it's always been essential for the working class.
So if convenience has always been a survival mechanism, why do we feel so much guilt about it now? Why all the pressure?
Well, that brings us to the barriers people face today. It's not just about history, it's about the standard we're being held to. One researcher called it the righteous foodie movement.
The pressure to be perfect. The Instagram aesthetic.
Exactly. There is a study cited by a commenter named Bala. It found that while people are cooking, remember that 50% stat,
Right.
they aren't cooking the good meals that food writers want them to cook.
You mean the fresh, organic, locally sourced, slow-cook meals?
Right. If you make Hamburger Helper, you're cooking by the data's standard, but you're failing by the foodie culture's standard. People are incredibly stressed. They're trying to satisfy picky eaters. They perceive healthy ingredients as expensive.
And let's talk about the cost. Not just money, but the time tax.
This was a great point raised by the commenter Jasmine. We often calculate the cost of cooking just in terms of the grocery bill.
But Jasmine laid it out. Cooking isn't just the 20 minutes you spend stirring a pot. It's the driving, the parking, the shopping, the prepping.
And the cleanup. Don't forget the cleanup.
Oh, never.
Mm.
Jasmine pointed out that eating out saves you the frustration cost.
And that frustration cost is real currency for working parents.
Yeah.
But there's an even more severe barrier, which is geography.
Food deserts.
This was raised by George Gale. For many people, this isn't a choice about being lazy. In many poorer urban communities, real food literally isn't available.
Right, if the only store within walking distance is a gas station, you're not making a fresh salad.
Exactly. Or if the nearest grocery store is 2 bus rides away, you can't lecture someone about buying fresh broccoli if there's no fresh broccoli to buy.
But despite all these barriers, time, money, geography, stress, the desire to cook hasn't gone away. The flame hasn't gone out.
No, absolutely not. There was that touching comment from Elizabeth Powers. She described herself as a widow whose husband had always been the cook.
And after he passed, she was left with a kitchen she didn't know how to use.
But she didn't give up and just order takeout forever. She started learning.
Yeah. She used online tools, blogs, videos. It shows that cooking is still a vital skill people want to learn. It's not just a chore, it's an emotional link.
It is. But that emotional link brings us to the most heated part of this entire discussion.
Mm-hmm.
If we agree people are cooking, but they're using shortcuts, is it still cooking?
Oh boy. Here we go. This is the battleground. We have to talk about the comment from Awoa.
Awoa! This was a very spirited contribution.
Spirited is a polite way to put it. Awoa basically came in with a flamethrower. The argument is that people claiming they have no time are just making excuses.
The lazy accusation. This is a counter-argument to everything we just discussed.
Yeah. Awoa argues that reheating a jar of sauce isn't cooking. Real cooking means starting from scratch. And they gave this specific example of a chicken Dijon.
The 30-minute meal defense.
Right. Awoa says, look, you season chicken, cook it, take it out, add cream and Dijon mustard to the drippings, serve it with green beans, boom, done. Why is that so hard?
And to be fair, strictly as a recipe, that does sound delicious. And it is technically fast.
It sounds great. But Awoa goes further. They claim that grocery shopping should only take 1 hour a week if you aren't, and I quote, dithering like a plonker.
Dithering like a plonker. It's a very specific, very British critique.
It is. And the advice is, turn off the TV. Stop gossiping. Awuba says, I was a single mom working 12 hours a day and I did it, so stop whining.
It's the classic pull yourself up by your bootstraps argument, but for the kitchen.
So putting aside the tone, what do we make of this? Is Awoa right? Are we just a bunch of complainers?
It's complicated. On one hand, Awoa is technically correct that it is possible to cook fresh food quickly.
Dude, it's not physically impossible.
But this perspective completely dismisses the mental load, the physical exhaustion of overwork. If you're on your feet for 12 hours, the effort to plan a menu, check if you have Dijon mustard, and then execute it.
It's the difference between physical time and mental energy. It's decision fatigue.
Exactly. And I think there's a fascinating inversion here. Awoa calls complaints about cooking first world problems.
Right. You have a kitchen, you have food, stop complaining.
But you could flip that. You could argue that complaining about jarred pasta sauce is the ultimate first world problem.
That's a great point.
If you're feeding your family warm, safe food using a jar of ragu, and someone yells at you that it's not real cooking, who's actually the privileged one?
It's gatekeeping. It's saying your effort doesn't count because you didn't crush the tomatoes yourself.
And that connects right back to the data we started with. Remember the home supply definition.
The gray area. The frozen pizza versus the bag of flour.
The data says that if you use that jarred pasta sauce, you are cooking. The food purists say you are not. And that definition gap is where the entire cultural anxiety lives.
So the death of home cooking is really just a change in the definition of cooking.
I think that's the most accurate way to view it. We're moving toward a semi-homemade culture. We assemble meals. We use rotisserie chickens, bag salads, pre-chopped veggies.
And honestly, thank goodness for bag salads.
It keeps people in the kitchen.
Yeah.
If the bar is set at gourmet scratch cooking every night, everyone fails. If the bar is preparing food at home, then actually most of us are doing just fine.
So what does this all mean for you, the listener? We've covered Rome, data, internet arguments.
I think it means we can let go of the guilt. The historical data shows the golden age of everyone cooking perfect meals. It never really existed. The poor have always relied on convenience.
And the modern data shows we haven't abandoned the kitchen, we've just streamlined it.
Precisely. The kitchen is still the center of the home for many, even if the microwave is doing some of the heavy lifting.
I like that. It's a permission slip to be okay with the frozen pizza night.
As long as everyone gets fed and maybe sits down together for a few minutes, the mission is accomplished. The social value of the meal matters more than the origin of the sauce.
You know, I'm thinking about that widower again, the one who learned to cook online. It strikes me that the tools to learn are better than they've ever been.
That's so true. We have less time, maybe, but we have infinite knowledge at our fingertips. If you do want to make that chicken Dijon, you can watch a video on how to do it in 30 seconds.
So here's a thought for you to take with you. Think about your last week of meals. Did you cook or did you just heat? And if you just heated, did it taste good? Did it nourish you? Maybe that distinction matters less than we think.
And maybe the real rescue mission isn't saving the souffle, but saving our sanity when it comes to dinner.
Thanks for breaking this down. I feel better about my grocery list already.
It's my pleasure.
Thanks for listening to vpod.ai. Catch you next time.